Hi and welcome to the 5th episode of Tech Horizons. My name's Madeline Skillen, I'm the Regional Marketing Manager at Procore Technologies, and today's episode will be focusing on sustainable tech. With me today is Dr. Anas Bataw, who is an expert in sustainable technology. Hi Dr. Anas, how are you doing today?
Hi, very well, thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'd love to just kickstart the podcast by first talking about what's your role been in sustainable technology and sustainable building within the Middle East.
Sure. So my involvement in sustainable tech or sustainable construction have developed through the years. So being an engineer, and I've been involved in the industry for some time, looking mainly from an innovation perspective, started my journey in the UK, then Singapore, then here in the Middle East. I've always noticed that although we try to innovate as much as possible in programs and projects I've been involved in, sustainability has always been something that's good to have. And now we're moving to a bit more serious when it comes to sustainability, and therefore my involvement have been a lot more active in that field, where we've been involved in enhancing the way we design and construct our buildings in order to achieve sustainable city in the future.
Sounds like you've come from quite a varied background then across multiple different countries. Could you just actually define for the audience, what is a sustainable city?
Sure. It differs from one place to another, but in general, what is a sustainable city is a city that considers environmental, social, and economical impact when it comes to designing, building, and operating the urban development, which in general is a city at the end of the day. That's how I would describe what a sustainable city is. Now, that will differ from one place to another. Sustainability in the countries I've worked in is different from one to another. In the UK, we have different climate change issues and challenges and opportunities. It's different in Singapore, and it's very different here to the region. So it does differ from one place to another, but I mentioned, but it's mainly those that look into the impacts from early stages of urban development all the way to the operation of the city.
And in terms of some exemplary projects that you've seen in the Middle East, and I talk about the Middle East as if it's a homogenous area, but maybe, drilling down into certain countries, are there any projects that you think have been, stand out in terms of their sustainable build?
Absolutely. So there's two certain, when you ask me that question, there's two main projects or two main cities or developments I would always consider. You've got the Bataw city in Abu Dhabi. Again, that's a development that considered sustainability from day one, from the moment we were involved in the design of how the city would look like all the way to the operating of it right now, including the residents and including the people that live there and the organizations that reside there. So Bataw city have been an exemplar when it comes to sustainable cities. The other one is Sharif, the one in Qatar, Doha. Now Sharif developments, again, very smaller, much smaller development than Bataw and other cities or other developments. However, they've managed to consider sustainability from very early stages, from procuring local material, making sure that they fit very well with the developments, all the way to considering localization and local content, moving on to using modern method of construction, etc. And this is where the practices came in, and that's why I would really use these two as an example. But there's many other examples. A lot of them are still in design and development phases across, maybe in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of developments happening. But the two that have been really showcased and now we're learning a lot from them are these two.
Okay. And what do you think the key components of their success were?
There's a number of reasons. I think I've touched a few on a few pointers when I mentioned the reason why I would pick these two.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, I think collaboration, going back to the challenges that we have. So Bataw city looks at the challenge of the fact that we have a number of issues when it comes to renewable energy, the opportunity, the fact that we have sunlight throughout the days, throughout the year. So they did consider these two. The key success to any sustainable city, as I mentioned earlier, it's knowing where you are located and utilizing that for your benefits, whether it's challenges that you have in your location or opportunities that you have in your location, and utilizing them for your benefit to achieve the sustainable development that you need to.
So in this sense, the climate was an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's interesting, because sometimes when we talk about building practices here, the climate is so harsh, and sometimes we see it as more of an obstacle rather than an opportunity.
That's right. Yeah.
But in this regard, it was definitely to the advantage of the project.
And they managed to do that through collaboration, as I mentioned. I mean, without collaboration, these mainly two projects I'm referring to wouldn't have been successful. So it's through building private partnerships with the public, being incentivizing, again, as I mentioned earlier, early stages. And these two developments were developed quite a few years ago, especially Masdar City. Now, sustainability and sustainable construction especially have been quite costly and more, it costs more than doing things the traditional way. And hence why having the right incentives in place, having the right directions, having the right vision allowed them to achieve what they wanted to achieve.
It feels like, from what you're saying then, it's really a proactive approach instead of it being reactive.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I feel like sustainability is we're being more reactionary than we are proactive, but especially with these two examples, it was far more proactive.
Absolutely.
In terms of technology then, you touched upon collaboration and you talked about different kind of stakeholders and entities coming together. How do you see technology as facilitating better collaboration?
Collaboration works in a number of ways. Now, if you want to talk about collaboration when it comes to construction and project delivery or asset delivery, we look at collaboration from a number of angles, mainly the likes of the build information modeling. Again, that really enabled us to collaborate a lot more throughout the design phases and all the way to construction. This is mainly the aspects that we found, but also when it came to bringing in new innovations in construction, such as modern myth construction. Now, modular construction requires people to collaborate. You cannot achieve modular construction or modern myth construction if you don't collaborate from very early stages in the project, where everyone has to make sure that they give the right inputs very early to make sure that we can actually start producing and doing the production within the factories before we move on to site. So the collaboration have been touched on a number of angles from when it comes to innovations and technologies. Again, it's to do with having the right platform to allow us to do collaboration, and then being challenged to collaborate better in order to achieve that challenge and in order to achieve what we want to achieve.
And also often, I guess, training people to collaborate better as well, because we talk a lot about the output of data, but it's only ever going to be as good as what you're inputting into it as well. So when we talk about collaboration, it's very much about making sure that people know how to input the data correctly in order to get, great quality build and the right data to inform, obviously, the right sustainable practices and be more proactive in their approach as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of challenges then, because we talked about opportunities and we've that sustainability and bettering our building practices pose, but what do you see are the challenges in this region to better sustainable practice?
Now, the challenges that we have are quite unique to this region. The biggest challenge that we face here is the speed of urbanization, urban development. Now, we see new cities being thought of and popping up in the Middle East. That itself is a big challenge when it comes to sustainable development. Usually when it's sustainable development, the slower we have urban developments, the better for the environment and the climate change and etc. However, this doesn't exist here. That's the main challenge, but that is attached with a lot of vision, a lot of strategies, and we can see there's a few cities that have been designed and about to be developed in the region, such as the Line and Neom and others. They have sustainability at the core, because we know if we're going to come in and say we're going to develop a new mega city, a lot of eyebrows will be raised, especially in this region, and therefore achieving and delivering this from a sustainability perspective, it really will tackle the challenges that we have.
Do you think that net zero is achievable?
I think the definition of net zero it does differ from one place to another. It does differ
Okay.
from one person to another and one organization to another. Is it achievable? Yes, we've seen some buildings, and I believe there's one has been announced on Sheikh Zayed Road that will be the first net zero building to be built.
Yes.
And it's a nice, phenomenal building as well. Although it's blocking my view to the Palm, so I'm not a big fan of it. However, it's
You always run that risk in Dubai.
exactly. But it's definitely achievable. However, if you go and talk to the team that has been involved in that particular project, they'll tell you they've went through a clear vision. They had a quite clear target that they need to achieve, and they had to achieve it from day one. It all starts from the planning and the design phases. You can't just think that you can achieve net zero building after it's built. And this is where, if you'd ask me the question on the existing building, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to achieve net zero in the existing buildings that we have, because when they were designed and built, they never considered these aspects moving on to the operation.
Of course, it's very difficult to make a building net zero retrospectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued to know what your opinion is in terms of how successful we've been in the region in comparison to other regions, because you've worked across multiple different countries now. We tend to do things bigger and better. We have very ambitious plans, and we have a lot of financial backing to be able to execute on those. How are we performing against some of the other parts of the world?
Absolutely. So how are we performing? Again, it depends how you look at it.
You're giving me some politician answers here.
No, it's the reality that we have. It's the situation that we have in the Middle East. It's a lot more better than what I've seen in my experiences. And the reason why is because we always have the backing. We always have the support.
Yeah.
There's always the vision. Especially in the past, I would say 7-8 years in the Middle East, there has been a lot of directions and a lot of push towards sustainability and sustainable developments. And we've seen this not just in the design and construction phases, but also in the operations. We've seen a lot of mandates coming up that we don't see anywhere else. Maybe in Singapore we have something similar, but certainly in Europe and even in the US, we don't see these mandates as coming in, whether it's to do with supporting the construction sector, or even supporting the asset managers and operators. What I mean by this, when you talk about support, it's not just having a mandate and that's it. You must do X, Y, and Z and leave it to that. There's incentives. There is guidelines, and there's a number of guidelines that were published by the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment in the UAE, Ministry of Infrastructure and Energy in the UAE, and other ministries and other municipalities across the region, whether it's in Saudi, Qatar, Kuwait, and others, and even Oman. So that really helps and really incentivizes that. Also, we see the fact that a lot of the developers, a lot of the construction entities, and a lot of the organizations in this region start to have sustainability at a chief level, at a board level. So from my involvement in a number of organizations, we have people at chief level sitting there making decisions, challenging certain things that we would see on sustainable and being heard and being listened. And what the biggest proof of what I'm saying is the fact that we have the COP28 this year.
Absolutely.
And this really shows that the drive towards the incentives, the push and the mandates and the vision for sustainable developments moving forward.
So you talked about a chief sustainability officer being present at board level. How do you think they are working closely with a CTO, for example, to ensure that technology is having the transformative impact on sustainable building?
Now, there is a lot of chief sustainability officers that are very technology driven as well, which helps. But I have seen this, and this is where I sit most of the time, and this is where my role is, where I translate the sustainability requirements into something that is related to technology, especially from a delivery perspective.
Yeah.
Now, CTOs traditionally have a number of mandates, a number of requirements that they need to achieve in a vision. And as I said, driving these visions from a CTO perspective, they always have to look into the government. They always have to look into the national requirements, but also the company requirements and company visions and strategies. If these have sustainability embedded within, so if the chief sustainability officer managed to embed sustainability requirements and visions and roadmaps and etc. within the company vision, it will be easier for the CTO to take that and translate that within the roadmap and achieve the sustainable development through technology. If there isn't, then we'll see some clashes, we see some challenges, and sometimes we see chief sustainability officers driving certain initiatives, even though related to tech, without having the CTOs involved in them.
That's really interesting that you say that the two are so well interlinked, and actually a lot of chief sustainability officers come from a tech background or have, a firm understanding of the transformative impact of tech. Do you think as well that obviously the regulatory environment and that being more formalized today, as it is anywhere around the world, is obviously aiding and pushing that level of innovation when it comes to sustainable tech?
Absolutely. Sustainable tech or climate tech have been quite a big drive in what COP28 is doing. The presidency team, led by the president of COP28, and the whole COP team, and all the different entities working with COP28, have initiated a climate tech initiative and an event a few months ago, pre-COP. And the purpose behind this is really to bring in a number of ideas, a number of technologies, to marry technology and sustainability together. Because sustainability, if we try and tackle sustainability, which is something that's been existing for some time, and we've been trying to tackle it for some time, and we haven't really managed to some extent, to a certain extent, it's our opportunity to bring in technologies, the new innovative ways of achieving certain things, and this is where technology and sustainability can link. And as I mentioned, I've been heavily involved in that field, whether from my role advising certain government entities or organizations or even startups. We see there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of entrepreneurs leading the way, and we see a lot of investments as well from private entities and private sector, enabling that marriage of the two, of sustainability and technology. So to answer your question, yes, and there's a lot of drivers. Are we there yet? Not yet, unfortunately. The reason why is because climate tech or sustainable tech doesn't really make sense financially yet, because we have other industries that, if you want to look at it from an investment perspective, it will make a lot more sense to invest in than you would do for the climate tech and sustainable tech solutions. However, we do see a lot of improvement. We do see a lot of impact being driven by these technologies, but we're still far away from that. But hopefully, maybe through COP28 initiatives and throughout all the pushes and pulls from the region, whether it's in Saudi Arabia or Qatar or here and others, we will see some impact driven towards climate tech, especially in this region.
You referenced about collaboration again there, and I think it's really important as well to highlight the role that technology partners have to play in this as well. Because I don't know about you, but I think there's a lot of tech vendors out there that need to more proactively feed in and collaborate with those that are the sustainability startups, the government entities, to be able to provide the right solution for that moment in time. Would you say that tech vendors could be more proactive in their approach moving forwards?
Always give them a hard time. Although there's a love and hate situation with them. Look, we can't achieve what I just mentioned without the vendors. Whether it's a large organization all the way to entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, and the startups. We need everyone to be involved and actively involved. Otherwise, we won't be able to achieve anything. When I talk about collaboration, and I've spoke about this a number of times, it's about the quadruple helix. Quadruple helix is basically governments needing to come in and make sure that they bring in the right incentives, as I mentioned, the right strategies, visions, and etc. And then you have the industry. The industry needs to make sure that we have the right projects that we need to implement these initiatives on, and the support and the investment. Also, we need to bring in academia, and within academia, the researchers and etc. that needs to come in with the best solutions and how can we achieve them and address them the best way possible. Last but not least are the technology vendors and startups that need to come in. These vendors need to play a big role to achieve what we need to achieve. It's not just about putting the right regulations in place. It's not just about having the next sustainable city in the world. We really need the vendors to be involved. And in order for them to do that, we need to change the way we operate with them. It shouldn't be the way we operate at the moment. And I always say this, we need to really enable our ecosystem. Therefore, we need to bring in the likes of the vendors, the likes of as I said, from the large organizations all the way to the startups. How can we bring them in differently instead of looking at them as a line item in our procurement process? Let's make sure that we can enable them from early stages, understand what they provide, enable them in the best that they do and why they exist, and make sure that we can inherit them within our processes and procedures. Therefore, when we want to deliver a certain project, we can deliver it utilizing these vendors. And to do that, we need to the early engagements of these vendors to be involved to make sure that we can have a win-win situation.
For me, the word partnership comes to mind. It's less transactional and more of a partnership.
Absolutely.
And you've got that bilateral feedback that there's then obviously informing R&D and making sure that the product is evolving into the space that it needs to evolve in order to set people up for success.
Yep.
Because technology investment is something that I talk about a lot, obviously working within the tech environment, construction tech environment. But there's also a lot of you want to make sure that you've got the ROI when you're investing in tech. And how do you make sure that you're going to get the biggest ROI? Well, by making sure that the right fit is there. And you can't do that unless the marriage, you talked about marrying up earlier on, the marriage is of a perfect partnership.
Absolutely. Partnership, again, it will differ from one to another. But as I said, these quadruple helix, these different pillars within our life, it doesn't matter which industry you're in. You'll have these four pillars within. We all need to integrate together. I'm not just talking about partnership between the government and vendors or the industry and the private sector and the vendors, but with everyone, including the academia. Academia does not have a lot of partnerships, although they would love to. And you're probably familiar with the Centre of Excellence Smart Construction I was involved in for some time. And this is what we were driving.
At Heriot-Watt.
At Heriot-Watt University. We were trying to, and we did, and it's continuing to do so, to build that bridge, to make sure that we have the right vendors in place, but also have the industry and government in place working with the academia to make sure that we can achieve the best partnerships. As I said, win-win situation.
Yeah. Do you think that the movement has to come from top down? Do you think the top down approach is going to drive or yield the best outcome when it comes to sustainable build? Or do you think that it also needs to start at a grassroots and kind of work its way up?
I don't want to give you a political answer to that, but no, seriously, it's the answer to this. It's both ways. We do definitely need a top-down approach, as we've been talking at the beginning of this. That we need to have the incentives, the vision, and the strategy, and etc. And we spoke about the examples that we have as existing cities that manage to do so by having the top requirements and top mandates being very clear from early stages. But also we need to have a bottom up, and I don't really like to call it bottom up or top down because it's not really a hierarchy. It shouldn't be a hierarchy. It should be that everyone exists. For me, vertically rather than the having a hierarchy, etc. Because everyone exists for a reason, as I mentioned earlier. Now, if you want to look at it, however, from that perspective, having a top up approach, i.e., as a lot of people would call it, from the delivery arms or the vendors all the way to the government, we still think this is required. However, for that to meet in the middle, in the industry level, and make sure the industry is ready to say, okay, it's not a chicken egg situation where I want to do innovations, but I'm not sure if I can do it because I'm not really getting incentivized, or there's not a clear strategy, or maybe I'm going to be wasting my time and money. And yes, even if I do it, it doesn't really have any impact to me. And at the same time, if there is a mandate, They don't just wait around for vendors to come up with solutions which there might be shortfall of. And we see this quite a lot now. We see there is technology that have developed to the extreme, like for example AI and other the likes of ChatGPT and etc. These technologies have really developed so rapidly, way more than any regulations the top-down approach could catch up to, and that's why we having people from the to the top trying to stop that development, and that's why we want to make sure that we have some sort of collaboration in early stages to make sure that the vendors are aware of what the governments are ambition to drive and etc., especially from a sustainability perspective, and vice versa as well, and make sure that this meets across from an academia and research perspective, but also the industry as well.
So nobody's playing catch up, and we're all moving at the same pace.
We have to. I know it's easier said than done. But there is a lot of examples that we've managed to achieve this, and we could talk about the other way, which is modern method construction. We have the push for modern method construction happening at a high level. We wanted to make sure that we do it, and there's the government push, there is the industry need for it, and they understand what the way to achieve it. But again, research and entrepreneurship and vendors are not there yet to achieve what we want to achieve. There is some solutions out there, but not scalable and etc. And that's why we have that gap. So again, it depends how you look at it. It's not it's this or that. It's both of them. It's both ways.
Are there any innovations in particular? You referenced AI. We talked a little bit earlier on about BIM, although BIM's not a new innovation as such. Is there anything that you think is really picking up the pace and pushing sustainable building?
In all fronts. So there's the digital front and there's the non-digital front when it comes to technologies. The digital front, I see there's AI and autonomous vehicles, even in construction, driving sustainability during the delivery of projects, and even for the operations. So AI, I've seen AI being utilized in design, in construction, but also in the operation and maintenance of assets, and also looking at how can we develop urban developments a little bit better and more sustainable. The non-digital aspect of things, as I mentioned, the 3D printing, the modern method construction, the prefabrication, there's a lot happening in that field. Again, the industry is pushing a lot more for it because there's a lot of mandates to achieve certain targets that might not be able to achieve it from a traditional perspective. But also we have the fact that we have sustainability impact because we would push the works into a controlled environment. Therefore, you will control air and noise pollution on sites. You will control and manage the waste management and material waste that as the biggest issue that we have within the construction industry. And the list goes on, health and safety and hazards and etc. So there's a lot of push towards that. And I think we're doing a lot of catch up towards that as well. So there's two fronts to that.
You mentioned 3D printing. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more about the impact you see 3D printing having on sustainable building, just because it's becoming a little bit more widespread now within the Middle East and particularly in the UAE. Could you maybe explain to me what role you think 3D printing is going to play in the future?
So 3D printing, again, I'd put it under the bracket of modern method construction. If you look at it from that group of initiatives or innovations, 3D printing does bring a lot of sustainability impact. To be a bit more precise, we see there's a lot of developments of 3D printing's material. I remember one researcher was telling me, and actually what they've done in their research was implemented in the prototype that they did in Germany last year. But they were looking at sustainable material, and the reason behind this is they said, if we're going to change the way we're built, we might as well look at different ways of different material. There's no need to try and 3D print concrete, especially the traditional concrete that we have. Why not make concrete greener? I don't mean paint it green, but have it more sustainable. but also in the same time, why concrete? So there's a lot of, so maybe 3D printing might not address directly sustainability, because you might say, building a house, yes, there is a few impacts from a sustainability perspective from 3D printing, especially when it comes to material waste and other reasons. But ultimately, I think having 3D printing is the ultimate way of really changing the way we look into construction. By doing that, you would change everything. You would look into buildings from a different perspective. Why you start asking questions that no one have asked for hundreds of years. Exactly, and that's why I'm more passionate about 3D printing, because of what the impact 3D printing will bring into the industry rather than what 3D printing does as a technology.
You talked about waste a little bit, and we talk about, as a technology provider, we talk a lot about rework within building and trying to reduce rework in order to pull back on, material wastage. We talk a lot, obviously, about the financial savings that you can make and the time savings, but also the impact that you're having on your emissions by saving and decreasing your material waste as a result of that. Now, that comes with platform technology, but I think if there's a way in which we can automate that supply chain a little bit more and improve the collaboration, and I think 3D printing kind of plays into that to a certain extent as well, would you say?
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot today, to be honest, and I always like to ask a couple of last questions just to finish off. So my first question is, how optimistic are you about the future of Middle Eastern construction, and perhaps more specifically about the future of sustainable building within our region?
Absolutely. So when it comes to sustainable construction, we have a very positive vision that's coming up. In fact, it's very competitive across the different countries in the region, which for someone like me, it's very exciting. Unlike other regions where sustainability is addressed differently, as I mentioned, especially from an operation perspective with the aging cities around the world. Here, we still have new, huge developments, large giga projects and et cetera in different countries in this region. And sustainability, as I said, plays a big role. In every single one of these developments, we have sustainability at the chief level, as I mentioned. Even if it's a CEO, you'll find them talking about sustainability. There's actually a conversation I was having 2 days ago with a CEO of a big company in the region, and he was talking about a number of things, and sustainability was a topic that he kept mentioning. And I turned around to him and said, "Are you a chief sustainability officer, or you're a chief executive?" Which is a great impact. So we have,
that's really positive.
Absolutely, we have sustainability being addressed at a high level, and all the way to people on the ground. We have a lot of startups and a lot of vendors and a lot of initiatives that's been driven. In fact, there's a few solutions that were born out of this region that now operates internationally. We have a number of sustainability consultants and advisory that were born out of this region, without mentioning names, and now they're international and being all over the world, advising governments and developers around the world to achieve sustainable development. So in a nutshell, we might have started a little bit later than others, especially in Europe and etc. But we are creating some positive impacts, and we're creating waves for the future as well.
I've definitely noticed as well that we're setting standards. You mentioned about it. We're starting to drive that and be at the forefront of that innovation now. So, maybe we caught up for a little bit of time, but now we're starting to be in the driving seat, so to speak.
Absolutely. Look forward to that.
Yeah. And my final question is, if you were to give anybody some advice that was looking to get into the construction industry, sustainability, what advice would you give them?
The advice I would give is construction industry is evolving. Therefore, you don't have to be an engineer or a quantity surveyor or a project manager or an architect to be involved in the construction industry. You could be a computer specialist. You can be
a marketer, like me.
Exactly. You could be material engineer. You could be anything these days. You could be a sustainability specialist. So there's a lot of the construction industry is not just about hats and dirty boots and etc. So it's evolving quite a lot, and it's a very big, a great opportunity for the young generation, especially, that are interested in construction, because it plays a big role in everyone's life. Everyone do live and work and play in an asset that was built and that was originally designed and built by someone, and therefore it does impact all our lives. So just to say that if you want to be involved in an industry as big as the construction industry, you don't have to be the traditional specialist to be involved in it. You could be a gaming engineer or whatever it is that you can be involved in it. So if you do like what you see in terms of construction, I'm sure you can be involved in it one way or another.
And that level of what would I call it, variety, is also welcoming a lot of diversity.
Absolutely,
as well.
Yeah.
You know, gender diversity.
Absolutely.
Especially.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Anas. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today.
Pleasure's all mine.
And I can't wait to see what you do in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.